Hello and welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here as always to talk about mind-body symptoms, mind-body issues. These can be called by many different things and in many different names, but really they're all the same thing no matter who's saying whatever they're saying or whatever term we're using. These are all about what happens in your mind, your thoughts and feelings, and how they can get channeled into your body. Now, we know this happens on a day-to-day basis all the time. Blushing, you get embarrassed, blood rushes to your face. Crying is a mind body experience. You feel sad or sometimes happy, even, and it can lead to changes in your tear ducts and tears roll down your face. We know that mind body experience happens. What most people don't understand is just how far it goes. Now, I found out the hard way, as many of you have as well, and it came from experiencing symptoms that not only came from mind body experience, but then stayed there, got stuck. And I had no idea this was a mind-body experience, by the way. When I developed that first twinge of back pain and I started worrying about it, I didn't know about this stuff. Even though I was a psychologist who even was educated in the idea that the mind could alter the body, but I didn't think it could do it in the way that it was happening. And that's very key for us all, is to recognize the real lived experience of mind-body experiences is so physical, and it is physical, that there's no way we think it's mind-driven in any way. But it is. So I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. Every second, I had no sense that it was going to get better. And what happened is, as is true for many of you, I think, the entry point is often the books of Dr. John Sarno, a brilliant doctor who was treating people for back pain and realized that none of his treatments were working. None of the treatments in medicine were working at the time. This was in the 70s and 80s. And he started to develop a sense that when he talked to people about their emotional lives, things started to change. But not just that. He also noticed that the people who started to believe in that mind-body connection changed even more. So this is the thrust of this. When I started getting better, Sarno was a huge help, but I still had lots of questions. And that is the basis of this Q&A. I once sat down with a therapist who had trained under Dr. Sarno when I was still trying to recover and not there yet. And I just peppered him with questions. And the fact that he could answer them well really helped. I needed that confidence. I needed to know why I would get better. I needed to know, why did this go this way? Why does it go this way at other times? All of those lingering questions are what I call doubt, or they're a form of doubt. And in many ways, they're the best form of doubt, because when we have questions, we can get them answered. Well, that's what tonight is for. That's what this whole idea is about, is that you need to get your questions answered. Otherwise, you will continue thinking the exact same things, and your body will respond to those thoughts. So we're going to change how you're thinking with new information. That's my job. I do want to tell you, when you ask a question, I'm going to try to answer it to your full satisfaction, but if I don't, follow up. You can follow up on this Q&A. You can send me an email at dan@crushingdoubt.org. You can come to my groups. Let me talk a little bit about that. On my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, I have certain resources available for you to learn about my system. How did I solve my mind-body issues, and what do I do with other people that has cured well over 1,000, probably more people at this point, and just expanding. On that website, there are a number of different resources, but among them, there are pre-recorded seminars, 12 hours of me talking about what my system is and how to resolve mind-body symptoms, but also how to resolve all the seeming contradictions that you hear out there, because you guys are going through a lot of different information trying to figure out what's what. Well, I try to make sense of it there. Meanwhile, because they're pre-recorded, you can get it in the middle of the night and start working on it. So lots of ways to engage with me, but that's one that you can just start whenever you want. The groups are 3 days a week, Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays 12 p.m. Eastern, and Fridays 2 p.m. Eastern. I may have expanding groups in the future as more demand grows, which I'm sure it will. But these are times where you can get on a Zoom call with me. It's similar to this, but it also gets much further in one sitting, because there's a lot of give and take. I'll hear what you say. I'll have questions. You'll have questions for me. And we'll get somewhere even faster than we do here. Nothing against the Q&A, but the groups are so helpful that way. They're also a great support, and it's a great group. So there we talk about the column system. Here we talk about the column system. We're going to try to understand what's happening in any mind-body moment through what I call these 3 columns. There's the emotions column, which leads to the onsets and upticks in symptoms because of an unconscious emotion that we don't know about that the symptoms distract from. That's for onsets and upticks. The doubt column is for when your thinking cements the symptoms in place and they seem to just not move at all or not move much, or they're very recurring. That's what the doubt column is for. The power column is to break through plateaus. When you're getting better, but you get kind of stuck somewhere, it's usually about some kind of conflict with the self. The power column is about your relationship with you, and there's work to be done in each of these columns. I know exactly what work to do. So when I hear about a symptom, a lot of times what we'll do is analyze which column does this fit into? And given that, what work should we do there? Okay, so I will take you through that with each question. Let me say hi to some people. Catherine Toomer, good to see you here. It is Lila's here as well. Newcastle housewife, good to see you. Rita, good to see you, and thanks for the emojis. The real Jumei has joined us as well. Thanks so much. Okay, Amy Blair, Lynn Slavensky, Dorisa, Karen Isaacs, and my friend Ross is here as well. Ross the boss, as he calls himself. And he is a boss. Okay. Dorisa says, hi, Dan and everyone. Good to see you. Now, let's dive in with some questions. I don't see any on Instagram yet, but you can put them in there. And by the way, if you're coming in midstream, or let's say you're watching this on recording and you want to come next time, don't ever hesitate to ask me questions. There's no dumb question, I promise you, because your mind is thinking whatever it's thinking, and what it's thinking is going to carry out in the body. So we have to honor any question. So let's bring them up. Okay, we'll start with Amy Blair here. Amy says, can you help me counter the doubt that maybe I just won't get better, or there's something too complex about my brain to crush doubt completely? I've been doing the work and still am in constant pain. Okay, let me start where we really should start, which is the empathy. Amy, I'm sorry you're still in it's not just the empathy, but also the encouragement. I'm sorry you are still in constant pain. However, I want to encourage you, this is not an atypical story. When people first get here and get the information, they're so filled with doubt that they don't tend to break through it super, super quickly. And one of the things that we have to do is usually break down the doubts into their individual doubts. I'll give you an example. Right here, you said, can you help me counter the doubt that maybe I just won't get better? Or, now, the way my mind works is there's actually two doubts here, and I don't mean that as a problem or anything, just highlighting it. One doubt is maybe I just won't get better. Then there's a specific doubt that maybe I won't get better because there's something too complex about my brain to crush doubt completely. There may even be a third doubt in there about crushing doubt completely. And the reason I highlight these things is not just for Amy, but for all of you, is the job in the doubt column is these are the steps: observe, articulate, and counter. Observing a doubt means you're going to call it into question. You're not going to just let it get away with representing itself as fact. You're going to call it into question and ask, maybe this is a doubt. And that helps you start to look at it. Articulating is to get it, it's just what it sounds like, to get it put into words. So, Amy, you already put it into words quite nicely here, but this is a case where I'd want to articulate it even further. So, here's a good example. You're saying, I have a doubt that maybe I just won't get better, but I would want to know why. Now, in the group, I could say, all right, why? Then you say something. And then I say, okay, wait, why do you believe that? And I get a lot more information that way. This is not an advertisement for the groups, but just distinguishing why they're particularly useful. Here, we can do the same thing, but the follow-up questions have to come from you. So when I say, okay, why do you think you won't get better? Now, one of those answers is already embedded in what you said. There's something too complex about my brain. Even that probably needs to be articulated a bit further, because I would want to know what's too complex about your brain. Why do you think that? Some people might, these are pure examples. I mean, I'm not saying they relate to you, but though they might. Some might say, oh, well, I obsess too much, so I won't be able to do it. Or some might say, I have ADHD, so I can't even get myself to concentrate on it, so I won't be able to. Or some might say, I actually am really smart, so I end up thinking too much and I come up with new doubts and they just never seem to stop. Those are three totally different examples of why you might feel that your brain is too complex to crush doubt completely. Now, I'm going to start with the general because I don't have the details, but I'll say this. Nobody's brain is too complex to crush doubt, because crushing doubt ultimately is simply about recognizing truth. It's science and logic. That's like saying my brain is too complex to understand gravity. Actually, it isn't. If it's that simple of an idea and it is that true, you will get it. We just need to look at what's standing in the way of that. So this is doubt tricking you. Doubt is saying to you, "Oh, maybe it's too complex. Maybe your brain is too complex." Or some people come to me and say, "Maybe the system's too complex." There's only 3 columns. There I actually simplify them a lot. It can feel complex at first, but it won't be. And so this is just doubt convincing you, "Oh, can't do it." Now, here's the question. I just countered the doubt. That is the third step. But me countering a doubt doesn't do anything unless it works effectively. So I often say it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what you think. So I want to know what you think about that. And I'm going to answer a couple more things embedded in this question. And I think it's really interesting how much doubt can be in 2 phrases. Okay, so there's the doubt that you won't get better, and we're wondering why. Why do you think you might not get better? The complexity of the brain. We got to find out more about that as well. Then you said I've been doing the work and still am in constant pain. So I'm gonna make some uh, possible suggestions for what's standing in the way. But I will tell you this: the thing that is standing in the way is still doubt. Doubt is so tricky, and it'll find little corners to hide out in. So what I can guarantee you is the reason you're still in constant pain is that the doubt is not down enough. I don't blame you for that. That's not a criticism. It's not even atypical. But we do need to think about why is it not down enough? And what is it about? What are you doubting? What are you doubting about why you might not get better? Or what are you doubting about the work that you're doing? Because that's another thing that can come up. Sometimes people say, I'm doing the work. And then I hear them voice what their self talk is, and it's full of doubt, and they don't realize it. So I'm not saying it critically, Amy. I actually think this is good news. There's some doubt in there that we can find. And when we find it, you're going to get better. And even when you get better just a little bit, when it starts to move, that brings down doubt more. Or if we find an emotion that led to an onset or an uptick in symptoms, that's going to bring your doubt down more. As soon as we get something like that, it's going to start to come down. But it is not atypical at the stage you're at because you really just in many ways began with me, at least in the group. It's not atypical to not have gotten anywhere yet. Doubt is all about working on the thinking, and it's a lot of prep work. It doesn't have to take super long, but a lot of times the progress you're making is mental before the progress happens physically. Okay, very long-winded answer with lots of different parts to it, Amy. So I want you to think about that, and I want you to follow up as needed. I also encourage all of you, ask questions about what you're hearing me talk about with each person. The design of this and the groups, and really anytime I do anything, is not just to answer the one question. I want to answer the one question in a way that helps other people answer their questions more broadly. And so I'm trying to show how the system works with each question. Don't hesitate to ask questions about other people's questions or about my answers. Okay. All right. Thank you, Amy, for the question. And hang in there. You're going to get there, and I can guide you. Okay. Lynn Slavensky says, Hi. When pain gets high and there doesn't seem to be an emotional reason, how do you suggest handling it? Okay. A couple of different ways, Lynn, but the baseline intervention that I always use is actually simply just returning to the overall structure of the columns. The first thing I would do is go back and say, wait a minute, am I missing the column? Because you can sometimes be looking in the emotions column and looking and looking and looking for an emotional reason, what I call beating your head against the emotional brick wall. And then you might find, wait, this isn't actually an emotional thing. This is this is about doubt. So you want to always be able to scale back and look at the columns and say, wait, which of these 3 is the driving force here? Now, it still could be the emotions column. It might be that there doesn't seem to be an emotional reason, but it turns out there is. And what I can do with that is do the emotions column work to get you there. We look at the timing. We look at the nature of your emotional themes. We see which one is active right then. And we may be able to uncover that there actually was an emotional reason. However, a huge amount of the time, it really isn't emotional. And the largest portion of the time, it's doubt. There's a reason that my podcast and my upcoming book is called Crushing Doubt. It is because doubt is the biggest component of anything. And when doubt is there, you've got to work there first. So pain can go higher for multiple reasons. It can go high, especially with with an onset or an uptick for emotional reasons. Now, when I say onset or uptick, what I mean is an onset is it was not there before and now it is. like suddenly in the moment, or an uptick. It was there, but it wasn't this bad. And then it went way high. That seems like emotions. Okay. So now you say when the pain gets high. I want to look at that specific word gets because I want to know what the experience is. And it could be that it just slowly but surely creeps up higher and higher, which I think you've actually described a lot of times. So I'm guessing that's what it is. To me, that sounds like doubt, just going up and up and up. And as it goes up, it gets worse and worse. You think, oh, it's rising, it's rising, it's rising. Oh my God, I can't stop it. Doubt going up and up. So that could be another reason. So when you say, how do you suggest handling it? I want to look in these columns. I want to see, does it look more like doubt? Does it look more like emotion? Or alternatively, does it look like power? And the way that you're going to find that it looks like power is if doubt is actually pretty low, but you have to kind of think intellectually about this. Are you on the verge of doing something that you like or you're excited about? Like, finishing up my book. That can lead to a power column symptom for sure. I'm excited about it. And the symptoms, well, doubt specifically, will come in and try to wreck that. So my guess, Lynn, is power is probably not the answer here because I do think there's enough doubt floating around in here. The real question is there an emotion we haven't uncovered or has doubt crept up? In your case, I would bet it's doubt. From having talked to you, but also from what you're describing and the way the symptom seems to manifest from what you've said, with it creeping up higher and higher, I just think doubt has gone up. And so do the work of the doubt column, observe, articulate, and counter. And your main job actually is going to be observe and articulate. I can do the countering. Okay. But try to get it, first of all, observe it so it doesn't get away with passing off as a truth. And secondly, get it put into words. What are you doubting? Okay. I'm going to start there, Lynn. Let's do follow up. All right. Okay, Karen Isaac says, thanks for your confidence in us, your reply, et cetera, et cetera. I'm happy to help, Karen. My pleasure. Thank you for your gratitude. It's a very, uh, I have a lot of gratitude for the job that I get to do because I get to help people resolve symptoms often very quickly, but also discover things about themselves that are very freeing and have optimism that they can get somewhere because things are making sense. So I will keep that up. Karen, thank you for your kind words. All right. We have some questions coming in from Instagram. Andre Jazz G. Andre Jazz G has joined us, and you gave me a follow. I appreciate that, Andre. There is going to actually be a lot of new content coming out. So, like, if you look at my Instagram profile, a lot of it is the Q&As lately because I've just been delving into the book. But there is new content that will be coming out probably in March or April. I'm going to have announcements about that. If you want to be up to date on that, you can go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, and sign up for my newsletter. Every Friday, I send out a newsletter that gives information about what's going to happen. So, Andre, thanks for the follow. Looking forward to talking with you as needed. Okay. Catherine Toomer says, hi, Dr. Dan. In the last 2 days, I have had inklings of safety. This is music to my ears already, even in the face of my obsessive thoughts that usually bring panic and fright. It helps so much even to perceive these tiny changes. It strikes down doubt and builds up hope. I know these tiny successes will build on each other. This is so right, by the way. This is how it happens. You start to bring down doubt one at a time, and you start to gain confidence. And when you start to do the power column work, as Catherine has, your doubt will start to come down even further because you realize you're allowed to be powerful. All right. Sorry, I interrupted you. What I'm reading, Catherine. I'm saying it aloud to you and group to help me remember this experience of hope. I'm getting better at seeing what thoughts/feelings I need to engage and understand, and which ones, like rumination as a compulsion, that I should pull myself away from, let go of as soon as possible. Make sense to you? Thank you as always. Not only does this make sense to me, Catherine, but there's multiple things I like about what you're saying here. One is the way your interaction with you is going is becoming more powerful. That's what power is a good relationship with you. But you're also saying, hey, this is lowering my doubt. As I see these changes, as I feel more safe, even when these things happen, just by understanding them, just by seeing those tiny changes, you're gaining in confidence. Doubt is coming down. That means the columns are working exactly as they should be. But you're also making a powerful action step. You're saying, I want to say this out loud. So I remember it. Not only can you remember it, it's recorded right here. So I would actually save tonight's Q&A somewhere, and you can go back and watch it and remember, oh yeah, I did think that. Because here's the thing, doubt is going to convince you that you're not getting better. And it'll even make you forget when you have gotten better. I often take a step back and think, wait a minute, what was it like a few months ago? What was it like a few weeks ago? What was it like earlier in this week? And even if there's upticks in symptoms, because there are going to be ups and downs, it's really good to just track it a little bit so that you can see, especially your successes. If you're having a flare up, as long as you can tie it to a reason and it makes sense, it's not going to set you back. As long as things make sense, we're going to make progress. But Catherine, this is great. And yes, it absolutely makes sense. So let me read actually the end of what you wrote. You said, seeing what thoughts, feelings I need to engage and understand, and which ones, like rumination, is a compulsion that I should pull myself away from. So you're also distinguishing between types of thoughts. This is so important. We all have different moments with ourselves, and we need to know which is which. I was just talking in group about this, that so many of us have had situations where our reality was questioned, and yet we have to question our own doubt. So we're having to learn to trust ourselves and learn to not trust ourselves at the same time. Now, how do you do that? You need to know which moment is which. You need to know which type of thought is which. That's why you've got to observe doubt and see it as a different thought than the thoughts that you can trust. And the thoughts you can trust are really based in the power column by understanding your story so well that you know what to trust. So, Catherine, you're doing great work, and it is my pleasure. Thank you for your gratitude. I appreciate it. Let's keep it up. You're on a roll. Okay, Ross the boss. Let's see. You said, been stuck at home with COVID for the past 6 days. I know that you have been, and I'm sorry. I hope you are feeling better, but you said going stir crazy. Anything you can recommend I can do to take away the anxiety? Feel like Nicholson in The Shining. Oh, well, it's a truly horrible feeling. And, when I had COVID, it was pretty rough, I got to say. One of the reasons that my COVID was particularly rough, though, and this is a mind-body thing, is I happened to get it right when there was a major emotional stressor involving my father. So my immune system was also low when the COVID came in. Now, what I want to say to you, Ross, and this fits with, my column system, but we can talk more about it if since you're not super well-versed in it specifically. To me, this is about doubt. The reason you're going stir crazy, I think, is because you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to last. This is going to last more and more. When will it end? When will it end? When will it end? Okay, so what we need to do is to recognize that doubt. And by recognizing it, we then need to have a place to go with things, because essentially stir crazy, which is a very understandable experience, is about feeling that you have doubt that it's going to get better or you're going to be able to get through it. And it's also just very uncomfortable physically. So you're stuck. What do you need to get out of it? My solution when you start kind of obsessing about things, which is what happens when people are feeling stir crazy, is to I'm going to say this one particular way, Ross. We may have to revisit it because this is new to you. But this is something that I call the power column. And that is where I want you to enter the space where you think, where am I in my life? What's my mission? Connect to your larger mission. Remember who you are at large and start doing that. So who knows what that's going to be? For me, I'm getting back into writing screenplays and things like that, and my songs as I finish up my book. So if I connect to my larger purpose, I'm going to go straight there. Larger purpose can be all kinds of things. It could be relationships. You could say, you know what? I'm going to use this time to reconnect with some old friends if you feel up to it. And so you go in that direction. But what you need to do is figure out who are you? It's interesting. You mentioned Nicholson in The Shining. I mean, obviously he had some kind of major psychotic issue going on there, but he also completely lost track of who he was. He was just staring at that typewriter thinking, I can't do this. And there was nowhere for him to go. I'm not saying I could have solved what happened to Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but for you, Ross, I want you to think about the bigger picture. Think about the upcoming month. What are you going to be doing? And get excited about it. And what can you do now? You could even just start making notes about it. These are the kinds of things that connect you to the future. All right, Ross, let's see if that helps for now. As always, I answer the question hoping it's to your full satisfaction. but I can never know. And there's so much that goes on in any one person's mind. So let's do some follow up. Okay. But you're going to get better. Don't let doubt get the best of you. You're going to get better soon. COVID usually doesn't go past 10 days. So you're getting close to the end of it. Meanwhile, if you want to watch a great movie, A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson, that's a great one. I don't know. So whatever you do, make sure it feels like it has purpose and feels good to you. And that's the trick, Ross. You can never know what I can never know what is going to feel good for any one person, but even you can't know what's going to feel good to you in any one moment. So follow the moments. If it's a moment where you need to sleep, sleep. If it's a moment where you want to watch a movie, do that. If it's a moment where you want to call a friend, do that. If it's a moment where you want to start writing a screenplay, do that. So get in touch with what you want. Okay? Feel better, buddy. All right. Talk soon. Okay, Michelle, thank you for joining us here. It's been a while. Good to see you. And Scotty Styles has joined, and as usual, has the greatest emojis. Thank you, Scotty. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Okay, Jane Smith says, hi, Dr. Dan and Teresa and Karen and everyone. Glad to be with you all today. Glad to be with you, Jane. And I know you weren't able to be here live last time, so it's great to have you here. Okay. Jane says, Dr. Dan, I was in a group once where even other participants noticed I was being left out, but the leader wouldn't acknowledge it. Yet you were explicit about this, so I felt sad and grateful. Thanks. Okay. So Jane, first of all, I do want to ask just for clarity. Are you saying that because I note, because sometimes I'll say on here, I do not want to miss any one comment. And part of the reason is I know what that would feel like. It's like he saw every comment, but not mine. So I hate that idea. Now, I'm not going to be perfect. That could happen. But I always say it shouldn't happen. And it's not personal. And what I want you to do is bring it up and say, hey, you missed my question, because my intention is never to leave any one of you behind. I think that's what you're referring to, Jane. So that's one of the reasons I am explicit about these things, is because, first of all, I do think it builds emotional safety, but it also, it kind of is an antidote to trauma to say these things out loud, to have them acknowledged, because so much of our trauma is about the fact that we've been gaslit and our reality questioned. In that situation where you were being left out and the leader wouldn't acknowledge it, that must have felt undermining of your reality. Must have really helped that some participants noticed it, but that would also really confuse you. What's this leader doing? Why did they miss it? Is there something about me? And you can hear all the doubts and all the decrease in power that come from this. So I can understand how you would feel sad and grateful when I'm explicit about this, but I would want to know, what did that mean to you? Because that can really hurt. And I don't want that hurt for you. So let's get that voiced, and let's see if we can get you to a place that you can feel better about it. This to me is power column work, where you kind of think through, how can I get myself to feel that I have value, even if that leader was ignoring me, not acknowledging, gaslighting, or whatever. Even if they didn't like me, I need to know I have value just with me. Okay, Jane, I hope that helps, but let's do follow-up, okay? All right. It is Lila. Good to see you here. Here's Lila's question. Hi, Dan. My doubts are mostly around whether or not my symptom is from long COVID or from the vaccine or from my mind. How do you begin to crush doubt when there are so many what ifs? One day I'll be sure it's mind body, and the next I'll be searching for answers again. It's exhausting. All right. First thing I want to say, Lila, is your experience is not unusual for this, and I mean that as good news. And empathically, when you can't settle in, you're like, well, one minute I think it's this, and the next minute I think it's this. One of the reasons that my system can be helpful, Lila, is that if you look at it through the columns lens, it helps make it more clear. If you're left to your own devices, not the columns or everything, but a lot of people, when they're just working on their own, especially if they don't have those columns built in, there's a lot of what ifs. They can feel one way at one moment and another way at another moment. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is the doubt creeps in. So your question, how do you begin to crush doubt when there are so many what ifs? One thing I want to encourage you is doubt operates on many different levels. And one of the levels it wants to operate on is there's too many doubts. It doesn't even want you to get to the specific doubts. It wants you to think there's too many what ifs. I'll never get there. That in and of itself is a doubt. So we recognized it just now. I observed it. And we need to pin that to the wall and say, no, that's not the way doubt actually works. And hopefully this will help you, Lila. If you conquer one doubt, it's pretty bad for all the doubts because doubt has now been exposed once. And when it's exposed twice and three times and over again, you start to gain a lot of confidence. One of the reasons I'm so confident against doubt is I have nailed doubt to the wall so many times. And I don't mean that discouragingly because there were so many of them. I mean it encouragingly because every time I did it, I got stronger. And so you're going to also. Now let's get to the specifics. Okay, so you're asking about long COVID. Now this is a controversial topic, but I'm going to give you my answers straight out as I always do, and I just want you to follow up. And you can even challenge what I'm saying because the whole idea is for you to settle it in your mind. But I am on the PPDA board. That's the Psychophysiological Disorders Association, which is the main nonprofit in the mind-body world. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because I'm on the board with a doctor, Becca Kennedy, who is the leader in the nation and world on long COVID from a mind-body perspective. So she's an exceptional resource for that. I'm actually going to have her on the podcast for an interview in the coming months. So be sure to look out for that. But what she said is that long COVID is pretty much she says pretty much. I don't even know if she said those words, honestly, but that's how I heard it. The idea of it being pretty much always mind-body, not quite good enough for me, but she's very strong about this. She basically says long COVID does not exist. I do not mean that as an insult to people who have had it. And I know it's controversial. It doesn't, the symptoms exist. What she's saying is not that the experience doesn't exist, but that it is not attributable to the virus. And if you think about it from a mind-body perspective, this makes all the sense in the world. We get all kinds of mind-body symptoms all the time from much lesser things. But this is a stimulus that is so varied and we know so little about and is so scary and gets talked about in all sorts of ways that it is a minefield for potential symptoms. Now, when I say this, Lila, I'm not saying it to say, oh, yeah, it's going to be so hard to figure out. Quite the opposite, actually. What I'm saying is it's so, if you see it as so obviously a breeding ground for doubt, or just an obvious breeding ground for it, then you're going to know this is mind-body. It 100% is. But, we then might, here's another way we'll have to work at things. And hopefully we can get more specific and have a deeper conversation, either over these Q&As or if you want to come to group or whatever, or email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. We would need to get into, well, why do you feel it's mind-body one day? And why do you feel you're searching for answers again? What specifically are the things that knock you back on your heels? Those details are where we crushed out. It's not, I think sometimes people think that I'm just saying, oh, just tell yourself not to have doubt. That doesn't work because you won't believe it. But in the details, that's where doubt gets in trouble because it's wrong. It is like a compulsive liar. And the more you grill it, the worse its answers are going to sound. And that's what I want to do with you. So when you say, how do you begin to crush doubt when there's so many what ifs? Start taking it to task. Start putting it into words. Start observing it, articulating it. And the more you do that, sorry, mind body cough for whatever reason. The more you do that, the more you're going to expose it. Okay. So that's what I want you to do. Now, my question to you, as it almost always is when I answer a question, is, did I answer that question to your satisfaction? Follow up here, Lila, or next time, or send me an email, or feel free to ask me about group if you want to come and talk about it. But in terms of it being exhausting, it's going to get so much less exhausting because you're going to make doubt do all the work. Right now, you're doing all the work. But if you start to articulate it and make doubt make a better argument, it's going to get tired and it's going to give up, and you will not have to work that hard at it for that long. All right, Lila, let me know if that answered your question and if that helped enough. Okay. It is Lila said, I plan on joining group. That's great. I look forward to working through it more. Thanks so much for what you do. I really look forward to it, Lila. And group is this really exhilarating time because not only do we get to know each other, and it is a fantastic group of people, very supportive, but you also get so much information watching these in-depth conversations, and the conversations we can get so in-depth about this. The other thing that I'll say is, Doubt is hard to conquer on your own. And that's part of why I'm here. It's what I wished I had had. I said this in group actually to people, and I think some of them were surprised by it, but I think it makes perfect sense. There are times where I have doubt, and the person I go to when I have doubt is my mom. And it's not because she is so great at this or understands it nearly as well as I am. It's because I need to hear it from somebody else. And in many ways, because she has listened to me talk about this, she's good enough. I even say, "What would I say? I need to hear it from you, not from me." And she says it. And if she gets it wrong, I'll tell her, "Okay, you don't have it quite right." But the act of hearing it from someone else really helps. So I look forward to it, Lila. Okay, Amy Blair says, I definitely obsess about the pain because it is constant. It is always on my mind. I think I don't believe the counters I tell myself because self talk doesn't seem to be working to get rid of pain. I think you nailed this, Amy. And actually, this is really good news that you nailed this. You don't believe it, and I don't blame you. So here's the thing, it's my job to help you actually believe it. What we need to do now is look at why don't you believe it? There's nothing wrong with not believing it. It makes perfect sense. But let's find out why. Because you're totally right. You can't rely on something that you don't believe. I have people come to me and say, I keep telling myself I'm safe, but it's not working. And I say to them, do you actually feel safe? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, that's why. But that doesn't mean they can't. It means they need help feeling safe. The columns provide that actually, at least for me and many other people, because they explain what's going on and what's going to happen and what we can do about it. I needed that safety, and they explain that. So I think you're on to a very key thing. Now, meanwhile, Amy, you'll stop obsessing about the pain when you feel that you're in a process that you believe is going to work. That belief, when you switch over into that, you're not going to be as obsessed with the pain. You're going to be more focused on the process. Okay, we're going to get you there, but let's look at why you don't believe those counters. Okay, Karen says, I like what you said to me about the symptom I'm having, the gross sniffles, sneezing so stuffy, being my ally. I know they are communication to me regarding my dad. I really think they are. Karen's having a power column symptom. And what that means is it's trying to communicate something. Emotions column symptoms are there to distract you. They just want to not have you discover the emotional information. Doubt column symptoms are there to expand the territory of doubt so that they can continue to protect you as much as possible, like strengthen themselves. Power column symptoms are there to tell you something really important emotionally that you hadn't been ready to understand but are getting ready to understand now. And that's what's happening, Karen. We're getting there. And I was so struck by this in group when you talked about the association with your dad that I would have had no idea about it. I just knew it was a power column symptom. So we explored it. The symptoms often guide us in terms of what we need to know. But thanks for the kind words, Karen. And I'm so glad we're doing the work. You're doing great. Let's keep it up. Okay, Patty Martin, good to see you. Hi, Dan. Someone had mentioned in group that they had symptoms that their dad had. That I believe was what Karen was talking about. I too have symptoms my dad had. I thought that it did not scare me, but now I think it did scare me. And that is why this symptom is harder for me to cure. Okay, so I think that's not at all uncommon, Patty. So first things first, when doubt comes in, let's talk about the forms of doubt. Fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and questions. You're having fear. That's actually the highest level of doubt. It doesn't mean we can't shrink it at all, but note that fear and push back against the doubt. As you push back against the doubt, you'll shrink it and you won't be so afraid of it. You might still be confused by it. And then you shrink that. And then you're just, I get it, but I'm not totally certain. And then you shrink that. And then you get to a question. You may already be at questions, even though you had a fear initially, but there is a doubt there. And we need to pinpoint what that is. I don't know what these things are necessarily, but I'm going to throw out some examples. It could be that you're part of you saying to yourself, I don't want to give up this symptom because that's giving up a part of my dad. Or I don't want to know about this symptom because it's acknowledging a part of my dad that I find so abhorrent that I can't even want to think about it. It's too painful. This is all power column work, and I know you know that, Patty, but as we do that, well, I say it's all power column work, but of course we have to shrink the doubt that comes in on top of it. Once we do that, though, we can go over and do that power column work. I want to encourage Patty, and everybody, that when you do power column work, you end up mourning losses. You end up moving past things that you didn't think you could move past by seeing them clearly. And power column work can be some of the most painful work that you'll do, but it does not last. At most, it lasts a couple months, but it can really hurt. And but then you're free of it. And I don't mean free of it like it doesn't bother you at all anymore, but it's just different. With my father having died when I was a baby, for most of my life, I basically denied it was really any big deal in a lot of ways. Then when I really let in that I didn't have a father, um, in that way, it really hurt, and it hurt for several months. And then since then, it hasn't hurt at all. Truly, not at all, because it now I just feel like it has made me who I am, and I love doing this. I love being who I am, and it's great. Now Patty she added something. I was thinking along the lines that I'm scared I will end up like him with this pain. Okay. So that to me is more along the lines of doubt. Okay. Now it could be that there's some power column component that makes it complicated, the idea of being like him. But if I'm reading this correctly, Patty, your main concern is I'm going to have the pain. Not that I'm going to be like him and I don't want to be like him, but more than I'm going to have the pain. That's what we would need to distinguish, though. If I'm wrong about that, then we need to go to the power column work. This sounds like doubt column work. So you're observing it right now. Great. Let's get it articulated. You said yes. So, okay. We're on the same page with that. So let's now get it articulated. Why are you scared that it's going to go this way? Let's get it put into words. We can talk about it in group tomorrow, or you can put it here in the next couple minutes. Let me know. Okay. So keep up the good work, Patty, and thank you so much for sharing. All right. Catherine Toomer. Catherine says, thank you, Dan, for the encouragement. It helps. I used to keep a log of mini miracles when I was first doing mind body work about my chronic nausea. I used to never think that I could address the remainder of my OCD symptoms through mind body work. With you over the past year and a half, I've been going for it. And look, some mini miracles. So it's happening again. That's a great thing. All symptoms are ultimately the same. If you've conquered one symptom, you can conquer another. She says, so I will start keeping my log again. Thank you, Dan. Beautiful, Catherine. I think that's great. Okay, Lila says, yes, thank you. Very excited about that. Can't wait to meet you in group, Lila. Okay, and please do let me know along the way. You can email me with any questions about it, dan@crushingdoubt.org. You can also sign up for the groups on the website, www.crushingdoubt.org. Okay, Nally Alchemy, thanks for joining us here. Adam Coloretti. I fell behind, didn't I? Okay, Rudemaster27, good to see you here. All right. I don't want to miss anybody. If I do miss, please do let me know. It's not intentional. Okay. Scotty Style says, I overcame my recent flare of my original hip pain. Hadn't had it since 2020. It took a week, which is amazing, all things considered. It really is. I mean, and I sometimes have a flare up and it'll last a couple days. And that to me is long for me, but I always get past it. As long as you're fighting doubt, you will always get past it. Previously, says Scotty, it may have taken months or years. I had to push back against any doubt I had that I had done something to myself at the gym, even though I very much did a lot at the gym and was sore from that too. I had to eventually untangle the two and realize that this type of pain was too intense to be from the gym. That's really big. It's a great point for everybody. The more intense the pain, the more likely it's mind body. Stuff at the gym doesn't really hurt all that much. I mean, unless you had some kind of violent collision, it's really not going to hurt that much. If it's that intense, it's usually mind body. Clearly, just a flicker of perceived danger associating the gym with my symptom took me spiraling without me wanting it to. There's the power of doubt. Pushing back the doubt with messages of safety was definitely a part of the solution. I needed to accept it was TMS. That's what Sarno calls mind body symptoms, and not from the gym, even though the gym was the physical trigger. Another great point. Okay. When you're doing something in the environment that could potentially cause pain or damage or whatever, your mind can latch onto that. The mind-body defense will say, oh, I'll take that trigger and run with it. And I'll make you think that's what happens. So like if I'm shoveling snow, one of the main things I'm going to do is I call it putting on my doubt armor. It's one of the ways I put on one of the situations where I put on doubt armor is to remind myself, you're going to worry this is going to hurt you. And it's not. Remember, I just keep it in my conscious mind. So long story short, Scotty says, it can be done. I am your proof. Beautiful, Scotty, and thank you for providing it. He says, so grateful for your methods, Dan. It is my pleasure. Okay, Leggy Sister, good to see you here. You're joining towards the end, but I'm going to stay for a couple more minutes. So if you do have questions, let me know. You also can look back at this on recording or come next week. I'm here most Thursdays, but I certainly will be here next Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I have a couple more questions to get to, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Okay, Jamie, good to see you. Dan, I feel so hurt. I decided to leave this best friendship. She didn't fight for it. Now I feel so anxious and emotional. I think it is because I want to talk with her, but she keeps shutting me out. Interesting enough, the dizziness symptoms have not skyrocketed, although I have had anxiety, palpitations, and want to cry. Thoughts, encouragement, please. Thanks. I have a lot to say about this, Jamie. First of all, I applaud you for leaving a relationship where you aren't prioritized enough. There's a Maya Angelou quote, which is, I hope I don't get it wrong, but I think she said, don't make anyone a priority who only thinks of you as an option. It's something like that. That's how this friend was treating you, Jamie, and that's not good enough. So bravo to you. This is a power column move. This is you betting on yourself, really, and saying, I deserve a full friendship. So I think this is good. Now, the fact that you haven't had the dizziness symptoms skyrocket, to me, that's because the dizziness symptoms are about not being powerful. You were powerful here. You said, no, this is not good enough for me. Now you're having a different symptom, and I think that symptom is in relation to being powerful. The anxiety and palpitations, they're related to being powerful, and that wanting to cry, I think, is just purely emotional. It's a big deal. You're hurt. And I've been hurt before, wanting certain friendships. What I have found in general is that those were not my people, and you can find your people. But living in power is how you do it. So remember, you've already got your husband, you got your son, you got me, and we're just going to build from there. Anybody who thinks you're not good enough, get them out. You did a great job. I so applaud it. Okay? Thanks, Jamie. All right. Jane Smith says, yes, you're right, Dr. D. You've been explicit about your caring intent, so I recall that other experience. Meaning, yes, gaslit, self-doubt. Now I can feel how power column leads to self-compassion. This is so key in multiple ways. But one of the things that happens in the power column is because you see it so clearly, you can suddenly empathize in ways you couldn't before. And that's what she's talking about. So Jane, this is going to make that power column work so much more effective because you have felt it. You know it works. Okay? Let's see. Full Flourish, thanks for joining us here. Rudemaster27 says, is it possible to have TMS and a real structural pain at the same time? Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to give my answer. I would say follow up, but we're not going to be able to follow up much today. You can follow up next time, or you can send me an email, dan@crushingdoubt.org. And that's not just for Rudemaster27, for anybody who I answer this question and you are wondering about it. It is possible to have them at the same time, but I don't want to be confusing about that. What I think is that most of the time, 99.999% of all physical experience is going to be purely mind-body. The mind is just that powerful. And a lot of it relates to triggers like the one Scotty was talking about. But it is possible at the same time when you have a real physical injury. I hesitate to use the word real because TMS is real. And it is real even in the body. But when you have an event, like let's say you run into a brick wall or you collide with somebody, you're going to have some actual physical ramifications from that. But you could also have the mind-body co-opted. I was playing basketball recently. I banged my elbow on somebody's head, and I was apologetic because his head got the brunt. But I did get a bruise on my elbow, and I always go straight into thinking, what percentage of this is going to end up being mind-body? And there often is a little percentage when things like that happen. So is it possible? Yes. Okay, now I think you had a more full question here. Is it possible to have TMS instructional pain and structural pain at the same time? Because I have a bad hip that they say needs to be replaced, but I get other symptoms in other places that are unexplained. So yes, that also can happen. First of all, there are plenty of times where people say, oh, you got a bad hip and it needs to be replaced because they're diagnosing the pain and saying that needs to be done. That's different than if they look structurally and like the hip is completely caved in and needs to be reconstructed, which can happen. It doesn't happen often, but it can. And in either situation, though, I'd want to be looking for what's mind body and what's not. One thing I'll say is that pain, especially, is often very mind body driven, even when there is a situation like that. My mom had a hip like that. She did actually have hip replacement surgery because it was so caved in. But most of her pain was mind body. The functionality and the range of motion, that was even that was partially mind body, but it was a lot of that was purely physical. So you can have that. And if you need help evaluating that, feel free to email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. I'm not a medical doctor, but I can talk with the medical doctors in the mind body community, get an opinion about that, and you can figure out which needs to be addressed in which needs to be addressed, in the pure medical way. And oh, this is interesting. So Karen Isaac says, on hip, I had hip replacement. It was a very easy recovery. Beautiful. Now, one of the reasons that would be, and I'm sure this is part of what you're referencing, Karen, is Karen discovered Sarno long ago. And since discovering Nicole Sachs and me and some other people, she's gotten even better at this. So you can get a lot of relief, even with some kind of purely physical issue. Justin 1988 has joined us here. Thanks for joining us here. It's right at the end, but a couple things. First, you can watch this on recording. I'm also here every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'll be here next week. And I want you to ask all your questions. Mind-body issues, it's so important to get your questions answered because what we think becomes very real in the body. It can take over any pathway in the body and do anything that the body is capable of doing for mind-body reasons. So keep bringing your questions and make sure that I'm answering them to your satisfaction. I think of this as just a very long discussion. I plan to have this discussion for 30, 40, hopefully even 50 years. We're going to keep talking about this and keep getting people answers and changing the perception and the understanding of the science and logic of this, that this is all true. Okay, Rita says, thanks, Dan. Thanks for the blue heart as well. And great seeing you all here. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to next week. The questions never end and the answers never end. So as long as I'm furthering your information and helping you feel like things are making more and more sense, then keep giving it a chance. Keep asking more questions, okay? And if something doesn't make sense, don't give up. Ask that question. Okay, guys, it has been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you next week. All right, take care till then.